Welcome to our channel Elimika Mtandaoni. This is the 15th episode in the series of videos on research process. Today we are going to talk about the reporting the research, how you can write your report for the research that you have done. Remember that we have gone through a number of episodes explaining how you can do research. So those steps in the process of research, they end up with the development of a written report of your research. So a research report is a completed study that reports an investigation or exploration of a problem, where you identify questions to be addressed, and it includes the data that have been collected, the data that have been analyzed, and the data that have been interpreted by the researcher. It is composed of the audiences, and it varies in length, it varies in format, and it differs from one another. It differs. We can have a quantitative report, or we can have a qualitative report, or we can have a report that has or uses a combination of the two, that is combined between quantitative and qualitative report. So if that is the case, then let's talk about the types of reports that we can write as we are doing research. One type of report that we can use or we can develop, we call it dissertation and theses. Dissertation and theses, these are reports for doctoral and master's research reports. If you are a student, then you take your master's studies or you take your PhD studies, then you develop reports, research reports as part and parcel of your study, and these are called dissertations or theses. So they are for doctoral and master's research reports, and they are prepared for the faculty and the graduate committee. The length of dissertation or thesis can vary depending on the tradition of a certain college or of a certain university. Another type of research report that we can develop is a journal articles. Speaking of journal articles, these are polished shorter research reports that you normally send to a certain editor of a journal. For example, we have so many journals like ResearchGate, we have Science Direct, we have a Scholar, we have a lot of journals that exist. So you polish your research, and your research gets polished, and these kind of research reports are very short. So what the editor does, the editor arranges for 2 or 3 reviewers, people that will pass through your report. Then those people will provide some comments about the study. Then in the end, the editor makes a decision based on reviewers' comments. The decisions can fall into one of the 3 categories. Your research can be accepted, your research maybe will have to be revised, your research might have been will have to be resubmitted, or it can be rejected. But usually when reviewers accept this manuscript provisionally, they do so based on their anticipation of successful revisions by the author. So you send that report, it is reviewed, then it is taken back to you, you do some revisions, then you take it back. So if the article is accepted in the end, the editor publishes that article in an issue of the journal. So a journal article in fact is much shorter than a thesis, or it's much shorter than a dissertation, because of page limitations that are imposed by the publishers, page limitations that are imposed by editors of the journal. We have another type of report that we call conference papers. These are research reports that are presented to an audience at a certain state or at a certain region or national or international conference, and they are typically sponsored by a certain professional association. You find there is a certain professional association calls for a certain conference, and people come and present their researches. After that, they produce a report that is presented to those to the audience at such states, region, nation, or international conference. The audiences for these conference papers they are normally researchers or practitioners, or they may be policy makers. Those are the we have reports for policymakers. You may be you may conduct a research for policymakers, and they are presented to those practitioners who are in positions, and they are responsible in certain sector, for example education sector, IT sector, etc., agricultural sector. So these individuals they may be called policymakers in a certain state or in a federal government, or any leaders in such sectors may require a researcher to conduct a research, and in the end you produce a report. So you produce that report for policy makers. How do you structure your report now? How do you structure your report? The physical structure of a study is the underlying organization of different topics that form a structure of that report. There are some techniques that you can use to prepare a structure of a report. The easiest approach is to examine different levels of heading used in the study. So you deal with different headings in your study. As you are doing your research process, there were some headings that you can pass through. Another technique, you can look at the 6 steps in the research process. Remember, we have passed through a number of episodes explaining different research steps. So you can report your study basing on those reports. Sometimes you can look for the research questions or the hypothesis and their answers. Then you develop these questions. But finally, you familiarize yourself with the structure of different other reports. So you can just pass through any other reports to see how they are written, and in the end, you produce your report following the template or the guideline. Now, how do we design an appropriate structure? If we want to develop a quantitative research report, then the structure of quantitative report consists of 3 parts. It consists of 3 parts: the front matter, the body of the paper, and the back matter. However, if you are dealing with the qualitative, it may vary considerably depending on the data that you gather from the qualitative study. Speaking of the body of the paper comprises of major sections. These sections, they fall under the research process steps. These are the same 5 sections that are typically found in most of the published quantitative reports. Knowing this structure will help you to read studies and understand where to look for information. For journal articles, the front matter and the back matter sections are normally limited because of the space constraints. For a dissertation or for a thesis, the researcher includes more front matter and help the reader understand the organization of the study. One of the front matter section that is optional is abstract and in reports. But if you write it in a complete form to include all of the elements of an abstract, then it will help the reader identify the major parts of a study. But another part of the body of the paper is the methodology part or the method part, the discussion. In this section is likely to vary from one research report to another because of the different procedures that authors use to their research designs. Then let's talk about the body of the paper. The body of the paper comprises, as we have said, comprises of several sections. The first section is the introduction section. In the introduction section, there is where you will explain the statement of the problem, the purpose statement. In there, you will put the main objectives, the specific objectives. Then you will put what we call research questions, and you can explain some theoretical or conceptual explanations in the introduction. So it is in the introduction where you can put all these other sections. And when we come to the review of the literature, what do you do when you say you review literature? Literature review, how it is written. First of all, you write the review of the previous research. you have undergone a series of readings from previous studies. So you report them, those previous research. Then you give a summary of the major themes. You have your major themes that you have identified while you are analyzing your research, your qualitative or your quantitative study. Then you give a summary of the major themes, and normally these major themes, they represent your research objectives. Then you present how your study will extend the literature, will extend other literatures. So in writing literature review, after you have reported the previous research and you have summarized the major themes, then in the end you say how your study will extend those other literatures. Then another part, the body of the paper, is methodology. It seems appropriate at this juncture to explain the difference between research methods and research methodology. Before we proceed with what is found in the methodology section, let me tell you about the difference that exists between research methods and research methodology. Speaking of research methods, this may be understood as all those methods or all those techniques that are used for conduction of research. These methods can be put in three groups. You can have data collection methods, you can have statistical techniques, you can have evaluation methods. So when you speak of research methods, actually you are speaking of all those methods, you are speaking of techniques that are used in conduction of research. So, but you have to note that research methodology is different from research methods, because research methodology actually is a way to systematically solve the research problem. You solve your research problem systematically. Thus, when we talk of research methodology, we not only talk of the research methods, but we also consider the logic behind the methods. So we use in the context of our research study. And in fact, we explain why we are using particular methods, or why we are using a certain technique, and why we are not using others, so that the research results are capable of being evaluated either by the researcher himself or by others. So speaking of research methodology, if we are to use mathematics, we could say research methodology is equal to research methods plus justification of the methods. So in writing on a research methodology, researcher has to indicate the following. So as a researcher, under the section of research methodology, what you will indicate? The first, you will indicate what we call a research approach that you have used. Remember, we can have a quantitative approach, we can have qualitative approach, or we can have combined approach. You can say if your research is inductive or deductive, or if it is positivity or non-positivity. So in the research approach, those are the things that you can explain. You can explain about what approach you have taken. Have you used the quantitative? Have you used the qualitative, or you have combined the two approaches? Have you inducted? You have done inductive study, or you have done deductive study. All this is shown while you are explaining the research approach. Another thing that you should consider while you are writing research methodology is research design. What research design have you used? Have you used the experimental? Have you used the survey? Have you used the ethnography, narrative, etc.? But remember, if you above there you have said that the approach is quantitative, then the design should fall under quantitative approach. You cannot say that you have used the quantitative approach, then you select designs that fall under qualitative approach. Then another thing that you should put in methodology is the study area. Researcher should indicate where the study was conducted. This study was conducted at Dodoma region, at Dodoma Mjini district probably, and you explain why you have taken a Dodoma region, or why you have taken Dodoma Mjini district. Another thing that you should explain is the unit of analysis, the majority entity or the level that was analyzed in the study. What or who was being studied. So you have to explain there. Then the fourth thing that should be included in methodology is population and sample, as well as sampling techniques. Then this is followed by data collection methods. In the previous episode, we talked about data collection methods for quantitative, data collection methods for qualitative, and again, you explained about data analysis techniques that you have used. Have you used statistical techniques? Let's say you have used the descriptive techniques, or you have used the inferential techniques. You state why you have used the such. Then you also put data presentation approaches that you have selected. Have you used tables? Have you used the charts, graphs? Have you put just explanation? How have you presented your findings? So you put there in your methodology, and you explain that in short. Then we have another part that we call it the result section. In the results section, here you put some descriptive analysis for your data, the results of your descriptive analysis, the results of your inferential analysis that you have used it to address the research questions. You put your tables, your figures that you have used it to display your data. So that is in the results section. Then it is followed by the discussion part. In the discussion part, here you put the summary of major results, and you explain the relationship that exists between your results and the existing studies in the discussion. Also in the discussion, you put your limitation of your studies and the implication for the future research. Then you put an overall significance of your study. After you have talked about the body of the paper, then you can explain the back matter. You can explain the back matter. The back matter of research study consists of two important sections. One, you put references. The second one, you put appendices. And these references will be in our next episode, which will be the last episode number 16. So in the episode number 16, we will explain how you can write the back matter, the references, but we will also include some citations, etc., so that you can get an understanding of how you report your research study. Thank you very much. This is Elimika Mtandaoni. Let's meet in the 16th episode. Thank you.